topic of baggage and cargo handling and the future of it. We do have some very interesting presentations today and are looking forward to lively Q&A session at the end of this session. This session will be recorded and at the end there will be a poll also presented. So we hope that everybody sticks around to the end, where we will also answer and hopefully have a lively discussion with your questions. You have a Q&A button on your screen. If you have any questions at any time, please post your questions via the Q&A button. We will answer the questions that were submitted in the second half of the webinar. And if we run out of time, we will answer all the questions that were submitted also in writing. With this, I would like to introduce you the different panelists for this webinar. Richa, if you may want to go ahead and introduce yourself quickly.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Richa Bhasin. I'm a senior project manager with Fraport. Fraport is the company that owns and manages Frankfurt Airport, and we're also active at other airports internationally. My main focus is on digitalization projects that are run through our Digital Factory initiative, which I will be talking about more later. And I'm also happy to share some insights about our baggage handling related project.
Thank you very much, Richa. So we move on to Erik, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, and Erik Andersen, and I'm Senior Vice President with BBHS covering the Americas. Currently has been working globally also with other companies, previously Scandinavian Airlines for many, many years. So have a quite vast experience in the airline and airport industry field. Look forward to present our BBHS innovative product for you in the upcoming session, even though it's a very brief presentation, which will be right to the point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erik. And Jan Willem, floor is yours for presentation, for your introduction.
Thank you, Rico. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jan Willem. I'm the Director Business Development at Assaia. I joined Assaia last year in March, so a perfect time to join with a company in the aviation industry. However, I spent my whole life in aviation, my private life, but also my professional life. Have a master's degree in air transport management. Worked for an aviation consultancy in the beginning, but since then, basically everything has been around aviation IT. So really happy to later on present you a little bit about how we can use state-of-the-art technology to really drive innovation in the cargo and baggage handling. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan Willem. And quick words to me. My name is Richa. I work for Illenium Automation, an automations company mainly in the passenger processing area. I'll be guiding you through today's webinar, and will also hosting the discussion in the end with the Q&A session. With this, baggage handling is not directly visible to many of the passengers. Nonetheless, many passengers are affected in case of any disruptions. And I would like to hand over to Richa Bhasin from Fraport, who will give you some interesting insights behind the scenes of baggage handling systems. Richa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, so my presentation is basically divided into two parts. First, I will give you a general overview of our digitalization and innovation strategy, and then I will move on to talk about the predictive maintenance project that we did at the baggage handling system in Frankfurt. All right, so let's start with the first slide, where the next one, please, where I would like to introduce you to our digitalization and innovation strategy, which we also call DAISY. So what you can see on this slide is basically the management summary, or really the essence of what this strategy means to us. What we've done with the strategy is we've specified, or really put into writing, that we regard digitalization and innovation as a way to really improve our financial performance in the short term, which is not something that we were focused on in the past. So that is really an important point for us here. And to be more specific about this point, what we say with the strategy is that we use digital and innovative technologies to increase our competitiveness, reduce costs, and to access additional revenues. What we've also put in the strategy is that we need to be more focused on our customers' needs and embrace new ways of working, for example, like agile ways of working to achieve our goals here. And really overall, what we have put in the strategy is the way we want to continue our work in the future, the way we want to do or run digital projects is through the digital factory. The digital factory we have set up sort of as an internal solution partner to our business units, and we support the business units with the project that we run for them. So in the end, they can boost their digital transformation, which of course will have an effect on the overall digital maturity of Fraport, which is a major goal for us. And so finally, with the digitalization and innovation strategy, our goal or our hope is really that we're able to accelerate Fraport's transition from the infrastructure provider that was really the focus in the past to a more service and customer-oriented airport operator that is able or that is equipped to really tackle the challenges of the future. Moving on to the next slide, to give you some more details about our digital factory. What we've done is coming from really known success factors that we have gathered from other companies, from best cases, and building on things like that you really need management commitment, that technology really has to serve a purpose, that it is useful to work with agile methods, and obviously to be focused on the customer's needs. Coming from that, we have set up the factory with two main pillars, which is basically the area in which the factory is active. So the first one is operational excellence, where we are looking for digital solutions for our current pain points. And then the second one is new business ventures. Due to the current Corona pandemic, we have decided to not look into new business ventures for the moment, but rather focus on the operational excellence pillar. So all our projects that we're running through this digital factory are focused on our current pain points. And to round this whole setup up, we also have our own dedicated portfolio and project management for the projects that we run through the digital factory. And also maybe to mention, obviously, we're not only aware of the success factors that we have to have in place for this digital factory to be successful, but we're also aware of the reasons why other companies maybe failed with initiatives like this, or why digitalization projects don't always work out. So we're also aware of those and obviously trying to stay clear of them. Moving on to the next slide, I can give you some more information on how the digital factory really works, because we have created this sort of standardized process that we use for all the projects to achieve a really fast and iterative development for the solutions we're looking for. And so the process always starts with the business unit approaching us with a specific problem that they need a solution for, or as we also call them, fields of action, where we look into to find our next project. And then when we have decided on the project, the first phase is the analysis phase, where we look at the data that is already available to us and try to understand the problem more. And then from that, we head into the development phase, which is where we try to develop minimum viable products. And this period is no longer than 3 months. What usually happens in this phase is that we end up working with startups that are sourced through our accelerator plug and play. And once we have finished the minimum viable product in these 3 months, what we do is we hand the project or the MVP over to the business unit, and then they are in charge of the deployment and the scaling if, of course, the MVP was successful and they are happy with the results. All right, so now that I sort of have laid the groundwork, I can move on to the specific project regarding baggage handling that we did with our baggage handling system at Frankfurt. Moving on to the next slide. The next one, please. To introduce you to the baggage handling system in Frankfurt. First of all, I'd like to give you a short overview. So I have gathered some facts and figures about the system. It has been operating since the 1970s. And actually there are still parts where you can find, the original things that were implemented in 1974, and they are still working, which is quite amazing. The total length of the system we have in Frankfurt is 81 kilometers, which I'm told is quite long, and it has the capacity to transport around 20,000 bags per hour. And the bags move at a speed of 5 meters per second. And to look at the more technical part, or the components the baggage handling system is made up of, we have, amongst other things, around 20,000 motor and gearbox assemblies. And these motors and gearboxes obviously are prone to mechanical or technical failure, which in consequence can cause interruptions. In 2019, when we had 30 million bags run through the system, we saw around 55,000 interruptions. And so we decided that, not all of these interruptions came from the motors and gearboxes, but we decided, because a huge chunk does, that we're going to focus on those for the project, and that we're going to implement a predictive maintenance solution for these parts. And to round off this overview of our baggage handling system, an important KPI that we look at in terms of the baggage handling is the baggage connectivity index. And in 2019, that was around 98%, which is quite high. But the hope was that with putting in place a predictive maintenance solution and reducing the number of interruptions, we would be able to improve this KPI even more. So with the next slide, I can give you a brief overview of the project. The next slide, please. Right. So as I mentioned, when I talked about the digital factory process, we run these projects, or the development phase of the MVP, in no more than 3 months. So what you can see here is that we started the project in mid-end October, and ended it in mid-January. So we were right on schedule with this project. And what happened in these 3 months is that at the beginning, we obviously looked for the right solution provider. And as I mentioned, we especially look at startups through plug and play, and through them we found the startup AI site from Berlin. AI site offers these sensors that monitor the vibrations, the temperature, and also the magnetic field, all in one sensor, with the parts obviously that you install the sensors to. So we were really impressed with the sensor and the product that they offered us, and we're able to get all the formalities done quite soon. And then moving from that, at the beginning of December, we were able to put in the sensors to the baggage handling system. Obviously, as we're talking about an MVP, we did not install sensors to the whole baggage handling system, and not to all those 20,000 motor and gearboxes, but rather we had a dedicated area where we put the sensors in. And I'll talk about that a bit more with the next slide. But from the timeline, what I can also emphasize is what was really impressive to us is that really just a couple of days after the sensors were installed, AI site was able to provide us with the first data analysis and really show us the condition of our parts in the baggage handling system that were being monitored by the sensors. And so they were able to do that this fast because the algorithms they are pre-trained, and so they know what regular activity with a certain part looks like. And so that's why they were able to deliver these reports so fast. Moving on to the next slide is where I can give you some more information on how many sensors we put in place. So as I said, we had a dedicated area of the baggage handling system, and we placed 45 sensors at specific motor and gearboxes that were chosen by the experts in this field because they knew which parts cause most trouble if there's a failure, and then this leads to an interruption. What is also interesting to know is that AI side would send us an alert immediately once the sensors detected an anomaly, and the charts would look like what you can see here, where you can clearly see with the frequency of the machine that is being monitored how the frequency is quite high with the anomaly, and then once our maintenance crew has checked this part, they maybe have fixed it or replaced it, the frequency goes down and everything is back to normal again. And other than these reports, AI side also offers their customers the possibility to access an online dashboard where customers are able to, on a regular basis, look at the conditions of their machines that are being monitored themselves, which is also quite nice. Yeah, and so to round up my presentation and to give you some more insights on our collaboration with AI side, their technology, and also some more insights into our baggage handling system, we have a video for you, a short video. Yeah, and then after that, I'm happy to take any questions you have in the Q&A session. So unfortunately, we missed some parts of the video there, but that video is available on YouTube, and I think we will share the link afterwards, and then you can have a look at it again, maybe.
Yes, thank you very much, Richa, for the interesting presentation. And I would like to remind everybody, please post questions on the Q&A section. If you have any questions, you can post them there and we'll answer them afterwards. Now, I would like to move to the next one. Not everything is about automation in the end. Not very important factor is health and safety of staff. And Erik Andersen will show you some solutions that make baggage handling smoother and safer. Erik, sorry, your turn.
Thank you very much, Rico. Let's go to the first slide. I'm sure that when we look at a current state, most of the people who are watching right now can recognize this from baggage halls, of course, differing from the US, from Europe to the Far East. But in general, what we saw from Richa is, of course, state-of-the-art sortation systems. But what happens at the end? All the bags end up like this. And how is that actually done? It's actually come down to an angle belt or to a flatbed. So there's a lot of obstacles around it, and it leads to very bad work environment and a lot of damages to people's bodily injuries. So let's flip to the next slide. I just wanted briefly to look at a few quick piece of information, facts about both BBHS, but also about the situation around the work environment. So we actually was recognized, fortunately enough, as the first innovative product for about 50 years by the IATA IGHC Innovation Award organization. So we were very pleased with that because there's gone a lot of development into this for quite a number of years with the company. And it was really nice to get this hallmark from IATA. We know also, because there's a lot of drivers around the product that we are delivering, and we know that one of them, for instance, in the US, certain airlines, very large airlines, they run up to $140 million in annual costs just for bodily injuries generated by the BHS processes. It's not visible usually, but on the bottom line, it will show up because certain people are responsible to accumulate all these pieces of information in the different airlines. Then we have the baggage handlers on sick leave with our system, which I'm going to present in a short while around the actually work processes. We can actually reactivate baggage handlers on the apron because it alleviates all the manual lifting, or about 95% of all the manual lifting. And that is a particular issue looking at German legislation. Then, of course, the IATA organization also mentioned during some of these conferences that there is generally a very high obstacle recruiting ground handling staff globally, because there's more and more recognition of that, the fact that the work environment, the work hours, the wearing down of your health is very bad on you, and therefore a lot of people don't want to work with it. So the next thing is also that when we look at our product, baggage carts, everyone here knows that when you look at an airport, you have maybe 2, 3, even in some cases 4 handling companies, and they all have sub-optimization. So you have lots of equipment sitting around on the apron. And with the full introduction of a BBHS system, you would be able to actually reduce, just on the baggage cart side, about 80% of whatever is sitting around on the apron, because you have a much more efficient movement of the system. And finally, if it's totally installed also in connection with whatever existing sortation systems there are, because it can be connected up to current installations, it can free up space because the footprint of the units are about 25% less than current systems. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is a little bit down memory lane with a Lufthansa Lockheed 104 Super Constellation from the 50s. That's interesting because Frankfurt am Main Airport, But look at what's sitting underneath the aircraft and the guys carrying the luggage around. And please go to the next slide, please. Oh, 2020. New aircraft, different uniforms. Of course, there's a little bit extra help from the belt loaders, but you had belt loaders in the old days as well, but they were just much more manual than what you see today. But the process, the work process, where you do all the bags onto the belt and into the cargo hold of the aircraft is exactly the same. So very little changed. Of course, you can get belt loaders today with snakes on it and similar. Otherwise, very, very limited changes. Next slide, please. Should we continue like this? Of course, we will say, no, of course, we shouldn't continue like this. And I think that recognizing during the COVID-19 period here that, of course, you have a very, very difficult situation for many of the airlines. There is an opportunity for airports, airlines, and ground handlers to actually reconsider and look at all the work processes and say, okay, it is time for automation. So why don't we go in and do certain enhancements on the automation side for the baggage processes on the in the airports? Please, next one. So if we look at a conventional departure process, we had the first picture before where we were looking into the current state. There's a manual makeup and sortation. No matter how advanced the sortation system is in the airport, this sortation ends up manual lifting onto the carts, going out to the aircraft. All the bags will then go into the aircraft, and many times, sorry to say, if you fly a priority, when you are able to fly after C19 and even before, did you get your bags first? If you have a priority bag? No, you don't, because it's not sorted. So in general, then of course you have to do a manual hookup of the truck that carries out all the trolleys, and then you go out to the aircraft side, and what do you do again? You do manual. You do manual lifting from the back cart and onto a belt loader. So it's very much as it used to be. Next slide, please. So what do we look at here? This is at Billund Airport. This is just to tease you a little bit, because this is actually how we can offload and unload the bags from the aircraft, where you just have one guy sitting inside the baggage hall, and then everything goes automatic into the BBHS carts, which are then on roller beds, and it's Mr. Newton, the gravity, that actually fills up the carts. Next slide, please. So the arrival process that we're looking at, as you saw in the previous picture, is now fully automated. So on the left-hand side, you can see that there is a contraption on the back of the belt loader. In this case, it's actually a MULAC, a multi-transfer it's called. And it fits exactly with our carts and can load all the bags automatically in there. Nobody has to touch anything. There's no manual lifting. There's no strain on your body and so on. When you then have the carts filled, then you go to the arrival station, which is where you actually drop off the bags. That is also fully automated because the carts swivel around their own axle. So it's also gravity actually emptying them into an arrival unit, which also dispatches according to an empty sequence where you can choose that priority bags that you sort at the aircraft side go in first, so you don't have to wait in line for that. And as you can see on the last one, there is a roller bed, which is super simple, so you don't have any electrics, pneumatics, or anything else like that in the carts. Next slide, please. Departure process, the same. Before we had a guy standing lifting all the bags, but we have actually developed over the years a buffering baggage in capacity boosters, which you could equivalent a little bit to an early bag storage, but it's of course a different unit. But everything here is done according to a cooperation with the individual airport, where we do feasibility studies first, see what is possible with the footprint and so on. But it is a very high-end system that actually determines the first class bags, the business class bags, and the coach or insurance class bags. So they're segmented already there. So the makeup and segmentation is easily made. So as soon as you flush the bags into the carts, you know exactly from handheld devices, where are your items? Where are the bags that have to go in last to the cargo hold of the aircraft? And hence, you get them out first. So this is a fully automated system where you actually don't need any people doing anything else than supervising the system. Next slide, please. So let's just have a look at, as is on the left-hand side and with the BBHS. So we're just looking at 4 factors. We are looking at the turnaround time. We're looking at the lifting efforts that strains the people employed in this area, and lost and damage and staffing needs. And so you can see that even on the time saving with the BBHS system, there is actually a quite considerable time saving with this process. On the lifting side, it's so significant because you take away almost 95% of all the manual lifting. And of course, what we're talking about here are bulk loaded aircraft, which are about 65 to 70% of the world's aircraft fleet. So it's quite significant. Then, of course, as you saw, the BBHS cards, they are like cassettes. So as soon as you load anything into them, either on departure or on arrival, nothing falls out. You don't throw the bags. It's gentle handling. So you have a reduction in damaged bags and lost bags as well. And at last, the staffing needs also, of course, we're not looking at reducing very heavily, but there will be a simple reduction of a certain number of people working with this, but still you then have a different way. It's actually a supervisory position that you go into, and you overlook the whole process. But still, there is a lesser requirement. Next slide, please. BBS benefits, and of course you will be having these afterwards so you can have a look at them. But of course, there's always discussions when you're in this process with the different stakeholders, that airports and passengers and ground handlers, and point a little bit towards each other who's actually getting the benefit of it. But from this chart, you'll be able to see when you have a look at it afterwards that there's something in it for every stakeholder in this process. And at the end of the day, there's only one of these stakeholders who pays for this. That's the passenger. And he is the person, or she is the person who will determine that they're getting an enhancement of what they used to see before. Next slide, please. So finally, I have to state that this is a video that we had nothing to do with. It was recorded. It was developed by Changi Airport, the Civil Aviation Authorities of Singapore, and by SATS, which is the one of the ground handlers in Singapore. But it concludes pretty well our system, because you will see that there is some really good positive things with this one. I hope the video runs well and it doesn't drop out.
处理那个行李箱不是一件容易的事，要有力量跟耐力。最近呢 ，CAAS 跟 CAG 买了一种新的机器，给我们工作更轻松。行李箱从飞机上转移到了我们的舷盘，这个机器也很容易学。现在我们只调整那个机器跟那个小细节，工作比较顺利。希望以后每个航班都有这个倡议跟制度。
Thank you very much. So I hope that gave you it was a very brief video, but we only had 10 minutes for the presentation, everything. I think we're almost there. So I hope it gave you a insight into what automation, which is very proven to go into the industry right now, that can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erik. And I see some questions have come in. We will be looking at the questions in the session at the end of this webinar. So please feel free to ask more questions. We'll be going through all of the questions later on. Now I'd like to hand over to Jan Willem, who will take a more holistic view on the baggage and cargo processes and provide some insight on how business intelligence can be improved. Jan Willem.
Thank you, Rico. So yes, as Rico already said, I'll not focus on something specific or on a specific technology, but when I think about baggage handling and cargo handling, for me, there's always this question that you have this very complex process that has many stakeholders. And Rico, next slide, please. Where you have to kind of integrate various stakeholders with many different processes into a confined space and a confined timescale. You have your warehouse, you have transport, you have loading, unloading. So I'm always asking myself, how can we best as an industry use technologies that are already there, combine them in order to get a holistic view on baggage handling, on cargo transport, cargo handling, but also an improvement on those two things. And I think there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Some say, yes, you should do it like this. Others say you should do it like this. Then you have new technologies like the one that Erik just presented, where you have a new hardware that will make your life easier. But in the end, it's still a very opaque process. So for me, the key is to integrate and combine various technologies to achieve really the most optimal result. Next slide, please. For this, I'm looking at how can we cover the process from A to Z. So from the warehouse, from the baggage hall, over transportation to loading, unloading. And now in my example, I do focus a little bit rather into the warehouse, so into the cargo area, but the same holds true for baggage handling as well. So let's start with the warehouse and the baggage hall. Next slide, please. So first of all, we have to ensure that we use our resources as optimally as possible. So what are the resources? That's our drivers, that's our dolly trains, that's our ULDs. We have different kinds of cargos, different kinds of passenger baggage. We have tail-to-tail baggage, we have express cargo, we have pharma cargo, now we have all the vaccines. So they have different importance levels, they have different requirements from a handling perspective. So first and foremost, I think we need to use a state-of-the-art system to create optimal dolly train combinations, ULD or pallet dolly train combinations. For this one, you can, for example, use a resource management system. One there that I know of that has this functionality is, for example, the Informs GroundStar real-time system. I guess there are also others, Workbridge and so on and so forth, that can do this. But basically, we have to first not have a manual process of saying, okay, this pallet goes onto this dolly and so on and so forth. So that's your first part. The second part is that we have to think about safety, about making sure that the ULDs, the baggage, the pallets are correctly loaded and locked on the dollies. So are they in place? Are the locks up? For this one, we could, for example, use video. We could use a video camera that is looking on the dolly train and then use a technology such as the one we use at Assaia in order to automatically detect if the locks are up. Then we want to understand if we have a correct combination of ULD and dolly. So because in step number one, we optimize to have the perfect combination of ULDs on the dolly train so that it goes quickest to the aircraft. And here we can, for example, use a combination of video and GPS-based technologies. Next step is that we also want to understand if the dolly train is, for example, correctly positioned on the right loading ramp or is correctly positioned in front of the loading ramp. And this one, for example, is something that we could achieve with a GPS sensor. So to make sure that the right dolly train with the right dollies, with the right tractor, with the right driver is in front of the right loading ramp. that indirectly feeds back into the RMS because you also want to update your task status. And then last but not least, especially in a warehouse or in a baggage haul environment, you have certain areas where you want to only go 5 kilometers per hour or 10 or 15. So we need to track speed. And that one, again, can be done by GPS. Now, next part is transportation. So first and foremost, during the transport, the dolly is out there in the dolly train is out there in the field. And we somehow want to understand what's the current status, where is it right now? So again, that would be something that we could do via a GPS tracking device, and see, is it landside, is it airside, where is it airside, how close is it to the aircraft, and so on, to always understand what is the current status. Because in the end, when we look at it from an holistic perspective, what we want to achieve is predictability, reduction of variance, and transparency. Then we continue with the tracking of task status. So is it moving? Is it not moving? Has it passed certain milestones or like geographical positions? Again, that could be done via combining video and a resource management system where you originally allocated a task to a driver and to maybe a tractor. Then you, at many airports, especially from a cargo handling perspective, not so much from a baggage handling perspective, you also often have to go from a landside warehouse to an airside warehouse. So that means you have to go through a security gate. Now, in the old days, no one really knew how busy a security gate was at the moment. And even if you knew it, you didn't know how busy maybe a second security gate was. And there was no possibility for you as a driver or as an allocator to quickly calculate, okay, is it quicker for me to send the driver to a security gate that is maybe 1 kilometer further off, but therefore the person only has to wait like 1 minute? Or is it quicker to send him into the security gate where he has to wait for 10 minutes? Now with the video, we can, for example, understand what is the current waiting time in front of the security gate for every security gate. And then in the background, we know, okay, based on the GPS data of the dolly train, we understand, okay, it's quicker to actually send him into the very full security gate because it's quicker than driving another 1 kilometer and using another security gate, or the other way around. But at least we have this transparency, we have the data to actually look into this. As a next step, it is also important to monitor the vehicle status. That goes a little bit into Richard's part where we say preventive maintenance, predictability of are we within the operating envelope. And again, that is something that you can do via GPS data, via sensors that track constantly what is the current state of the vehicle. And to some extent, for example, from an outside perspective, we could also use video and see if the vehicle is moving or not moving. And then last but not least, also, while we are on the airport apron, we want to track speed again when we are in speed restricted zones. Next slide, please. And then eventually we arrive at the aircraft, or we are at the aircraft and wait for cargo or baggage to be unloaded. So in that area, we want to also do a lot of timestamping. When did the dolly train arrive at the stand? When did the first ULD or the first pallet or bag was unloaded from the dolly train, and so on and so forth. So this could be done again via a combination of video to detecting when the dolly train was actually arriving at the aircraft. We can send this information then to the RMS, which can update the task status, which can maybe recalculate if the task is delayed or not, and then kind of also replan the following task to arrive at a new optimal. From a KPI perspective, many airports are nowadays also required to present to the authorities when the first bag was on the belt out of the aircraft, or when the first bag was on the belt into the aircraft, because they otherwise have to pay fines. So from that perspective, that is also something that we can, for example, detect with the cameras, with the video. And then last but not least, and I think this is something that is really, really cool. What we can also do is if we have a camera, for example, installed at the high deck loader, we could, for example, even scan QR codes that are attached to a ULD or a pallet. Like when I speak about ULD, I mean the boxes. And then we can scan them when they go into the aircraft, and, for example, can connect them to a certain position, or at least say ULD 1 with the unique identifier 1234 went into the aircraft first, so it's probably positioned in that position within the aircraft. So and for me that is kind of the essence, where I say if we think wider and really not only look at one technology or at one specific area, but if we take a holistic view, there is a lot of stuff that we can do in order to improve the overall process, make it more reliable and more transparent. So, and I guess with that, we can.
Thank you very much, Jan Willem, for your insight, and thank you very much for all the presenters today. And Jan Willem just brought up a quick poll. So if you can please answer the poll.
Yeah, I think we can keep it on and simply continue with the Q&A.
Excellent. So thank you very much. We did receive a couple of questions, and I would like to address some questions now. There's one question from Dominic Griesel, who is asking Erik about the business case or return of invest of the solution. Can you add some additional information to that? I think you're on mute, Erik.
No, I'm not. Yep. So Dominique will actually be able to see that also from the presentation, but on average, of course, there are not two airports the same and installations are not the same, but on average, what we say is that it's at an average of about 3 years return of investment on the unit. I also saw that Dominique was it Dominique asking about
modification of belt loaders, if there is any modification required?
Yeah, and of course there is, because the belt loaders that we were looking at on the pictures do not have what we call a belt connector on the back of them. The other pictures that we showed from other installations where I said that that was a MULAG, in this case, that had a multi-transfer on the back, that it does not have to be retrofitted. That's currently available. And I know that others of the manufacturers are actually working to get some of these things instrumental in the market, so it's more readily available.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask a similar question to Richa. You also mentioned the benefits of the solution that you're implementing. Do you have any view in regards to return of invest? How many years or months or so on it would take to offset the investment?
Yeah, so we were not able to calculate the return on investment just yet, because we only had this short time where the sensors were up in the baggage handling system. And also what we found with this project is that although the sensors are quite good at detecting certain kinds of failures and interruptions, there are specific kinds of failures that can occur at our system in Frankfurt that are a lot of the times baggage related, that can occur in a very short amount of time, that the sensors still need to be trained for these cases. And these cases is really where we could see some more efficiency come into it. And that's why we haven't done that yet.
Thank you very much, Richa. And many questions are now coming in, and I would like to have one for Jan Willem. There is a question about ULD exact location in the aircraft load holds with the camera. Can you take that one on, please?
Yeah, sure. That's actually a good question. And in the end, yes, we cannot define the exact position within the aircraft hold when we scan the ULD, where you correctly said that it can be a pallet or a container. So that cannot be done automatically. But what can be done is that at least we understand which ULD goes into the aircraft first, second, third, fourth, and then combine this information with information that we maybe receive from an automated locking system or from manual notes, and then later on combine these in order to have a kind of redundancy understanding. And we can also understand when did a certain ULD really get into the hold, which in my opinion is important, especially if you talk about pharma. If you talk about cold cargo, so to say when did it arrive on the Apron, for example, we get a timestamp, and when was it actually loaded onto into the aircraft belly, so that we then have some kind of a time frame where we say it wasn't outside for more than, or it was not held on the Apron for more than, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes.
I guess to add to this one as well, ULD loading is a safety issue as well. You need to have ULDs in the exact location in the aircraft anyway. So I guess having cameras would to view which ULD goes where would allow you to make sure that there is no safety issues and so on with the ULDs going into the aircraft. Then I would like to move to a next question, and to Erik again. There was a question from Rosa Maria Diaz around what sort of space is required around the aircraft with the system. Is there any more space required, or is it the same, or is it less?
Actually, there is no more space required beside the aircraft. You don't need any fixed installations there. You have typically on an A320 or a 737, which is bulk loaded, you have 2 carts in the front, 2 carts in the back, because on average, of course, it differs from airline to airline, from destination to destination, how many bags are on it. But you can actually move around. You can actually have the refueling truck around there at the same time, and it doesn't hinder any offloading or loading on the aircraft. So the only other installation that you need, if we're talking on arrival, that will be either in a wall going into the arrival belt or inside the baggage hall, where certain of the units will be then connected up to the actual sortation system or arrival system. But on the Apron, no.
Okay, thank you. Another question by Ahmed, which you answered already in writing, but I think it would be interesting for everybody to hear about the time in regards to the manual process. Does the whole process take more time or less time in regards of loading or unloading the bags?
No, actually, what we have seen from so many analyses in different airports and measurements, and we've done quite a high number of these analyses. We see that there is a reduction. It's not a very high reduction on the timing of it, but it adds up. As soon as you look at volume at the airport, it gives a very high impact on total. But there is a certain reduction, and that is also mentioned in the presentation on the one of the charts.
Thank you very much. Then a more philosophical question from John Edmondson, and I think that's a question that we can probably debate for hours if we wanted. It goes to Richa about what Fraport considers its customer. Is it the airline or the passengers? And I guess this is a really interesting one. But again, maybe just a short answer on that one, and we can probably have a whole webinar on this topic to cover separately with different airports and airlines.
Absolutely. So from the airport's point of view, the direct customer, of course, is the airline in most cases. But when we talk about being more customer focused, we also always consider the passenger.
Thank you very much. And another one for Jan Willem. I guess there is a question from Christian Lambertus about the installation, if it has to be on premise or where the results are being interpreted, and how the solution can be integrated into existing RMS or operation system.
That's actually a very interesting and very good question. So there are multiple possibilities. There is a possibility to have, for example, a 4G or 5G enabled camera. So that would mean that we would be able to take the video stream and directly stream it into the cloud and have all the analytics piece done in the cloud, which is very modern, very scalable. And then there are standard APIs. For example, we really work with a REST API that has a push or a pull functionality, so that we can send this information that we do detect, and the structured data can then be fed into any kind of system, AODB, RMS system, cargo management system, and that is basically what is being done. Otherwise, we can also have a landline connection, so to say, a LAN connection, where the system is on-prem, and then can also, via the same APIs, be connected to other systems.
Thank you very much. And we're coming to the end. We have 1 minute left, and I think it will probably be good to just have one last question. Dominic is also asking, why not putting camera in the aircraft? Jan, Willem, another one for you.
Yeah, before I answer that, from my perspective, I don't know about the others on the panel, but I would also be able to stay 5 minutes longer if everyone is happy with that. Why not put cameras into the aircraft? Actually, we can put cameras into the aircraft. As I said, we could do 4G, 5G enabled cameras. We are actually also speaking with Airbus. We are speaking with some other suppliers that retrofit cameras in the aircraft. I would say that it's always a cost-benefit calculation. Is it really worth installing 1 or 2 cameras in the aircraft? And also, how about sending data from the camera when the aircraft is flying? So it's always a bit tricky. In general, it's possible, but I guess it's from an operational perspective, it's a bit tricky. And the question is if the cost benefit simply adds up.
Thank you very much, Jan Willem. And yes, I agree. I would like to thank everybody who has been on this webinar, and we can happily do a couple more minutes now. There are some interesting questions that we can probably also look at. There is another one from John about SLAs for baggage delivery, which would be directed to Richa. But on that one, I would like to also give a bit of a background. As I've been working for Swissport for many years, I've seen similar things around SLAs and so on at different airports, and probably there are more answers to these questions than there are airports or terminals. Very interesting there is that it's not necessarily that there are SLAs, but there are some airports imply in the licenses and so on that the ground handler has to perform to a certain level, has to have a certain level of staffing, has to have a certain time that the bags have to be delivered, and there can also be penalties. But again, this is airport by airport, and maybe Richa, you can, if you're allowed to, you can give an answer to this one for Fraport specifically.
Yeah. So I can really echo what you just said, Rico. They're implied, I think, KPIs or SLAs. But as far as I know, we also have contractual SLAs for maybe certain airlines, not all airlines. I'm not sure on that. But what I could not give out, but I also don't have is you know, the specifics about these SLAs. I have no idea.
I think also to add, it's actually a very interesting one. And from my time in this area, I've also seen that certain airports have really used this to improve the quality across the handling and really imposing handling requirements even on the low-cost carriers. Low-cost carriers who may not have cared too much about baggage being between from the aircraft onto the carousel in 10 or 15 minutes for cost reasons. But basically, certain airports wanting to make sure that for their own quality measures, it's actually the same for everybody, and that certain carriers cannot drop down to 30 or 45 minutes just to save costs. But again, I think, as I said before, there are probably as many answers to this as there are terminals in the world. I would like to have another question to Jan Willem. There is a question about using the already installed cameras for the business analytics. Is there a certain recording quality required, or can they be easily made for use?
Yes, so that's an interesting one. Basically, our system can work with any existing camera as long as it has a certain resolution. So, and we don't need any kind of 4K resolution or something. Normally something around HD or full HD is sufficient, but we've also already installed the system at airports that had cameras which with much lower resolution. So from that perspective, yes, there's no need to install brand new cameras or additional cameras. We can also use the existing ones.
Thank you very much. And that's also maybe is a follow-up question to that. The actual algorithms is not installed on the camera, right? It's installed separately, and you just need the cameras to get the video feed.
Correct.
Okay. As far as I see, I believe these were all the questions, and I would like to thank the participants again for the participation, for your time to spend with us today. If there are any more questions, please feel free to send us additional questions and follow up with individuals. We'll be very happy to answer questions. Maybe Jan Willem, you want to give a last word as well from your side, or?
Yeah, maybe just also from my side, thanks a lot for participating. There's one question I asked at the beginning, like what is special about March? Rico, maybe you can also go one slide further because there are our contact details. So March, actually, not today, but this week is our first birthday of Reboot Aviation. So 1 year ago, we kind of saw the light of the day, which is on the one side a very proud moment for us because we brought a lot of, I guess, value to the industry in the meantime through our webinars, through our publications, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, it also is kind of a sad moment because it says that we're now 1 year into this pandemic and the current situation. But let's look and let's end on a positive note. And we are happy to be here for 1 year and hope that there will be many more years to come. Thank you very much, everyone who participated and who joined us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, and hope to see you soon, another Reboot Aviation webinar.